Hello, my name is Pete Peterson, and today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple bean and brown rice soup. What I always do is I always take the rice, and I want to use brown rice. Brown rice is so much more healthy than white rice. Wild rice is okay too. You usually get a better price with brown rice. And brown rice and beans are a complete protein, so it's just a really great source of all kinds of nutrients. I just put in 1 cup of brown rice, and I'm going to put in 2 cups of beans with this. And the beans that I'm putting in right now are pinto beans. You can actually use almost any kind of bean that you want to. I'm putting in 2 cups of pinto beans. And I'm just going to put in about enough water to put about 1 inch over the top of the beans and rice. I'm going to put a lid on the pot, and I will let this sit for at least 12 hours, and possibly as much as 24 hours. The pot that I'm actually going to make and show you today, I actually let sit for 24 hours. There's a lot of different ways when you get around, after you've let the rice and the beans soak, that you can drain the water. You can actually just use the lid, and you can just use that to drain the water, or, as I'm going to do today, I'm going to use a drainer. But one of the things that you need to do is, or a strainer, one of the things that you need to do is you need to make sure that the strainer, that the holes are small enough that the rice doesn't go through them. And this is a really good strainer for that. So I'm going to pour this out. The beans that I used, that I put in yesterday, these have been soaking for 24 hours. These beans are actually red beans. Both beans and rice will expand significantly as you let them soak for 12 hours to 24 hours. So I drained the water. Now I'm going to add another 2 cups of water right back to it. And I'm going to put this on the stove. It's on high. And I'm going to add a can of broth. You can use chicken broth, beef broth. If you want it to be totally vegan, you can add vegetable broth. And I will just add a can of broth. And now I'm going to add a can of corn. And I'll put everything in, the water with the corn, everything I'll put right in there. I'm going to put the lid back on. You don't have to use a pressure cooker. I just happen to be using this pot because it's a little bit bigger, because I'm going to do it just a little bit differently today. There's a few spices that I always add in. One of them is I always put in red pepper, or I put in crushed pepper, crushed red peppers. As I was getting ready to do this today, I kind of reminded myself and thought about the old Home Improvement show and Tim Allen, because I didn't have quite enough crushed red peppers, and I wanted to use these instead of the cayenne pepper, or red pepper, the ground red pepper. And So I had a bag, my wife had a bag of red peppers, and I decided to crush them with my hands and to add a little bit more into here. That's a really bad idea. And as I was doing that, I had kind of an itch around my eye, and I touched my eye and was immediately in a lot of pain. And then I decided that I would take some water to try to wipe it out. That was also not a good idea. Thankfully, my wife was around, and she looked it up on the internet, and the cold milk actually does work. So after a little while, after being in a whole lot of pain, I felt quite a bit better, and I'm doing this. But red peppers is one of the things that I'm going to add. Another thing that I'm going to add is salt. Most of the recipes that I do, I don't put salt, but I will put salt in this. And then the other thing that I'll add in that's a spice is turmeric or cumin. And lots of times I put cumin seed in. This happens to be ground cumin. I don't put both in. These are both great spices though. They both have a lot of great health benefits, and it really changes the taste depending on whether you decide to put cumin in or turmeric. Today I'm going to put the cumin in. And then I will also put in some vegetable flakes with that. But I always put in onions, and I'll put in 2 to 3 onions. This time, because some of my onions are a little bit smaller, I'm going to put in 3 onions. This also makes a really big difference on what the taste is, and depending on the kind of onions you put in. I'm going to put in Walla Walla Sweets. Cut off the ends, and this one has some bad parts on it, and I'm going to cut out the bad parts. All 3 of these onions have been sitting around a little while, and I knew that they were a little soft and that I would be removing a lot from them. That was another reason for putting in 3 onions instead of just 2. Okay, when I cut up the onions, I'm going to leave them in pretty good sized pieces for this soup. So I'm just going to quarter the onion and then cut those pieces in half. As you can tell, it really doesn't take very long to do this. Everything's already in a rolling boil, which is exactly how I want it. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of salt. Like I said, this is probably the only recipe that I even add salt to. And now the infamous red peppers that I burned my eye with. Also 1 tablespoon. And 1 tablespoon of cumin. Now the last thing that I usually add is some vegetable flakes. Because I have a hard boil right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn that down. Now, today I'm going to do something just a little bit different. One of the other things that you can do is you can add some other vegetables to it. And I'm going to add a zucchini to it. Zucchini is a wonderful vegetable for a number of different reasons. It has a lot of great nutrients in it. But it also mixes really well with all kinds of food. So it's really a great thing to add to different things. I used to have a family friend by the name of Frank Clark, and Frank Clark absolutely hated zucchini, and he used to like to tell zucchini jokes. He and my dad were both in the Navy during World War II, and it was one of the only times when the two of them were together that I ever heard my dad talking about World War II, and he would tell, both of them would tell kind of some funny stories that had happened, and except for when my dad was with Frank, he just really never talked about it. But one of the things that Frank would say, one of his jokes about zucchini was that the reason that the pickup truck was invented was so that people could haul the zucchini away. And another one that he used to like to say was that the reason that door locks were invented on cars was to keep people from loading your car with zucchini at church on Sunday. Zucchini is just a really easy plant to grow. And it's an easy vegetable to grow. You can grow it almost any place, and it's really prolific. It produces a lot, and like I said, it takes on the flavoring of other things that it's with. And I mentioned Frank because, and I wanted to give you an example of this. Frank hated zucchini so much, and both he and his family. And one time I had, my wife and I had Frank and his family over for dinner, and had meatloaf and pumpkin pie. We had stir-fried vegetables. We had lime jello. Had a tossed salad, and every single item that we had on the table had zucchini in it. Now Frank wasn't allergic to zucchini, so it wasn't going to cause him any damage, and he had absolutely no idea that there was zucchini in anything. Afterwards, I told Frank and his family that there was zucchini and everything, and it was pretty funny for everybody. But that's just an example of how versatile zucchini is. You can just do all kinds of things with it. I'm going to cut it, because this is a little bit bigger piece, I'm going to cut it lengthwise. Then I'm going to cut it lengthwise again. One of the things about zucchini, if you let it get too big, you end up with all kinds of seeds in it. You really don't want to do that. So you want to get zucchini before it gets too big. If you can't grow zucchini, particularly if you live in rural places, there's usually plenty of people around that want to give zucchini away. So it's really easy to get zucchini in the summertime. So I'm just going to cut it up into smaller pieces. And I'm going to add that. And then I'm going to cut this one up into smaller pieces. And add those. And the last thing that I'm going to add is some cabbage. And really you can put in just about any kind of vegetable that you can think of that might fit in really well with a soup. You can put in carrots. You could put in mushrooms if you wanted to. You could put in some celery if you wanted to. There's a lot of different vegetables that you could put into this soup, and that it would still really taste really good. And it is, as I mentioned, just really incredibly nutritious. I'm going to cut the cabbage up into smaller pieces. And you don't have to cut it up into really small pieces. You can have pieces that are big enough that you can still taste them. As you can see, I probably have a little bit too much, but as the water cooks out just a little bit, I'll stir it a little bit more, let it come back up to a rolling boil, and once it comes to a rolling boil, then I'll just let it simmer for about another 10 minutes, and it will be done. Another thing that I really commonly add is a little bit of garlic. You can put in just a few garlic cloves for taste, but you don't have to. But if you like the taste of garlic, that's something else you can add. But that's it. It's easy to make, it's really quick to make, and it's incredibly nutritious. So give it a try, and enjoy your soup.